Enfield Poltergeist haunting. In August 1977, Peggy Hodgson called the police to her council house at 284 Green Street in Enfield, North London. She told the operator that furniture in her home was moving by itself and that she could hear knocking coming from inside the walls. The officers who responded witnessed a chair slide across the floor without being touched. They signed a witness statement confirming what they saw. They noted it formally, confirmed they had no explanation, and left. There was nothing in the Metropolitan Police training manual for what they had seen. What followed over the next 2 years would become the most documented, most witnessed, and most fiercely disputed poltergeist case in British history. The Hodgsons were not a family who sought attention. Peggy and her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy, had moved into the house after Peggy's marriage collapsed. The activity centered almost entirely on 11-year-old Janet, the second eldest daughter, slight and dark-haired, who would become the eye of a storm she never asked to be near. The Society for Psychical Research dispatched Maurice Grosse and author Guy Lyon Playfair to investigate. What they documented was extraordinary in its variety and consistency. Objects flew across rooms. Lego bricks and marbles were hurled at investigators with force enough to leave bruises. A heavy sofa flipped itself. Books flew from shelves. Fires started in corners of rooms with no ignition source and burned out before they could spread. A neighbor, Peggy Nottingham, reported witnessing Janet levitating above her bed through the bedroom window, an account she maintained for the rest of her life. They collected over 30 witnesses, including neighbors, police officers, journalists, and a BBC reporter, all of whom reported experiencing phenomena they could not explain. The consistency across unconnected accounts was one of the case's most troubling features for those who tried to debunk it wholesale. Then, Janet began to speak in a voice that was not hers. Deep, rasping, distinctly male, the voice identified itself as Bill, a man who claimed to have died in the house years before. It spoke through Janet while her mouth moved and her eyes rolled back. Researchers recorded hours of it. It spoke with the cadence and vocabulary of an older, working-class man. It answered questions. It swore. It told researchers things about the house's history that were subsequently verified. When they cross-referenced the voice's claims, they found a death certificate matching the name and details it provided. A man named Bill had, indeed, died in that house, in the same downstairs chair the voice described, from a brain hemorrhage. Janet, for her part, was examined extensively. Psychologists found no evidence of psychosis, no dissociative disorder, no underlying condition that could account for the trances or the voice. She was a bright, slightly mischievous child under enormous stress, living in a house full of strangers with notebooks, cameras pointed at her bedroom, while her mother struggled to hold the family together. The pressure was immense and relentless. The case drew investigators, skeptics, and journalists from around the world. Some witnessed phenomena directly. Others caught Janet in moments of apparent trickery, bending spoons when she thought no one was watching, faking levitations for the camera. The debate calcified along predictable lines. Believers pointed to the sheer volume and variety of witnessed events. Skeptics pointed to the children, particularly Janet, and the well-documented tendency of young adolescents to manufacture poltergeist phenomena for attention. What neither side has cleanly explained is the voice. Janet's larynx was examined by medical specialists who concluded that producing that sound, the sustained, low-register rasp that filled hours of recording, would cause lasting damage to a child's vocal cords if faked. Janet maintained until adulthood that most of what happened was real and that she had faked some things, under pressure, to keep investigators interested when the activity slowed. The phenomena faded toward the end of 1978 and ceased almost entirely by 1979. The Hodgsons remained in the house. Janet grew up, married, had her children of her own. She spoke rarely about Enfield until the story was dramatized and the world came looking for her again. She said the attention had cost her family more than the haunting had, that the 2 years of investigation had been invasive and exhausting, that she wished, sometimes, that Peggy had never called the police. Other families subsequently lived at 284 Green Street. Several reported nothing unusual. One former resident described waking to find a chair positioned at the foot of her bed that had not been there when she fell asleep. A current resident, interviewed for a documentary, described knocking sounds from the walls that began shortly after they moved in and that they had learned, over time, to ignore. Whatever was in that house, accumulated grief, adolescent energy given impossible form, or something older and less categorizable pressing through the walls of a North London council terrace, it left its mark on everyone it touched. The investigators who stayed, the mother who endured, the girl who spoke in a dead man's voice and spent the rest of her life trying to explain what she could not. Bill, if it was Bill, has not spoken since, but in certain rooms, in certain houses, on certain quiet nights, things still move that were not moved.